my goal is to talk about, yet another way of kind of giving students some experience coding, and particularly in the context of data science. So the program that I'll be talking about is called Coding Out Loud. And let me start with kind of the motivation behind wanting to do one more thing in this area. So one of my goals with this was to kind of provide more opportunities for students to, and I'm going to say it like this, code around and find out approach to learning. Because oftentimes when we are teaching kind of data science in the classroom, there's this expectation that you actually teach the students kind of what to do, and then come assessment time, either that's a homework assignment or a project, they're doing things on their own. So often there's this expectation that all or part of that should have been taught in the class first. And obviously there's many kind of modern and experimental ways of doing teaching in the classroom where we just kind of let the students find out on their own. But one of the difficulties I find is that trying to explore some of those, particularly in the large size classes that I tend to teach, sometimes is difficult. And it can also leave behind some students who might be worried about exactly how am I going to get assessed with it. So my idea was, can we do something extracurricular, or what are some things that we can do extracurricularly? Another piece of information I was kind of moving with in designing this is that there's been lots of positive feedback from students who take courses from us, and also kind of mentioned in literature when it comes to computing education, is that students like hands-on activities and they like live coding sessions. And so I wanted to kind of bring some of that into the mix as well. And another thing about kind of the design of this program is to try to teach students to learn to make peace with exploration, with an aim, but not always a conclusion. And to be honest, I said teach students, but myself as well. I think sometimes it's quite difficult to say, I'm going to try this for a while and then walk away. Instead, but I think that it's a nice way of getting some practice without feeling like everything has to be perfect each time. And ultimately, we wanted to generate artifacts for learning and also for student portfolios. So the students who are involved in it can share these pieces of artifacts as I have been involved in making this. And then similarly, we can reuse them perhaps for other learning experiences. So in terms of the design, one of the pillars was that it be student driven. So the learning experience should be designed around student interest. It should be time boxed, and I'm saying about 5 hours total. So each one of these Coding Out Loud episodes we expect no more than 5 hours from the student's time. And one of those hours is a live coding session that I'll be giving some examples from before, but there's a little bit of work before and a little bit of work after. And it's a paid thing so that we can actually clearly reward their time and commitment to this, acknowledging that it takes time to, create something that would be worth resharing and looking at, and ultimately not too stressful. So in this case, we're talking about a live coding session with a student. And I was originally thinking that if at the very beginning, we just told the students, you're going to live code for an hour and you're going to have a live audience on being streamed on YouTube, and maybe, we'll be pair programming, but you're going to be typing yourself. It seemed like the reaction from the students I kind of checked in with was, that sounds quite intimidating. So what we decided to do was to flip things around where we do put them on the spot, but not really put them on the spot. So they're not the ones driving and writing the code, but they're the ones who are navigating and kind of telling me what to do. So putting all of these pieces together, what came about is this idea of a session, which is a 1 hour, one data set, and a pair of programmers. The goal is to collaboratively explore and visualize data. So far, at least, we haven't dived into much modeling. Maybe that's something we dive into later as we iterate on these and potentially expand the definition. But so far, we've kept it on the exploration and visualization side. And most importantly, showcasing the process of doing data science as opposed to just the end result. There's a live coding component. And we're trying to figure out an audience participation component, but there's a lot of moving pieces when you're recording one of these things. So I'm not going to claim that we haven't necessarily figured that piece out yet. So in terms of implementation, how this goes about is the student chooses a data set or a focus or an inspiration, and then the faculty designs the learning experience around it. So by designs a learning experience, the idea is that carves out something that could potentially be reached within an hour, with the understanding that it very well might not be reached within an hour, but there would still be something worthwhile that can be generated in that hour. And then we do a brief check-in with the student and then start prep some starting materials. So that's some materials on a GitHub repository, and also set up an RStudio Cloud project where those who are participating live, even if they don't have R and RStudio installed, can just click on a link and find themselves in an RStudio window. Then we do the hour-long pair programming session, and then the student scripts an intro and an outro depending on how things went, depending on the trajectory we took. That gets recorded in the studio, and then thanks to help from Learning Innovations, those get stitched back onto the video. So now we actually have in the middle this live pair programming session, and around it this intro and outro. So I wanted to, in terms of prep materials, this is the sort of thing, if people choose to do so, can go to RStudio Cloud, to a project that we have set up for them. You can kind of see that there's like tasks that are outlined that we're going to try to go through, and our markdown file that they can work off of, but the rest of that is empty. In this case, we're trying to regenerate that picture. And you can also see in the Files tab that after the fact, we have actually added a version of this that's with developed code. So we've had 3 of these episodes so far, and I wanted to, my goal isn't to like play large pieces of that, but show you a little bit how they look like once the videos are recorded. And these are kind of hot off the press.
Hello. In this episode of Coding Out Loud, we begin to make a generative art piece inspired by the work of Yayoi Kusama. Her piece, All the Eternal Love I Have for the Pumpkins, is a mirror room filled with glowing pumpkin sculptures in yellow and black polka dots.
So this was Lillian, with whom we recreated that Kusama piece, and she's basically doing the intro. Another example was working with Holly, where we were doing, so that was a generative art example. In this case, we were building a table that Holly had sketched out for us, and we were basically trying to recreate this from this data set on makeup shades. And then in the first episode, working with Evan, we were trying to recreate a visualization that was about Doctor Who episodes. So all of these videos are available, or will be available, with all of the pieces soon. And in terms of next steps, we want to post these back, explore how these can be used for other learning experiences, maybe involve more students, maybe more faculty, more tools. And I would love to re-invite these students for a second round, where they're the driver and maybe another student is the navigator, and completely step out of the frame at some point and let students run with it. And all of the artifacts from these episodes can be found at this location at bit.ly Coding Out Loud. Thank you very much.